Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to paint a variety of different herbs in watercolour. Now herbs are great because they provide us with a range of different watercolour skills we can practice because we've got leaves, stems and flowers all in one project. So grab your paints and let's get started. So we're going to begin with rosemary, which is a lovely herb that grows in our garden just outside the front door, and it's a lovely smell to come home to every day. So I'm going to start with the sort of woody stalk that is on rosemary. So I'll just, with my size 2 brush, that's a nice yellow ochre mixed with burnt sienna stalk. Let's do a little bit down there, and then I've got some sort of slightly sagey green colours. This is Sap Green mixed with Cobalt Turquoise, and then I've got a darker bluey mix which is Sap Green mixed with French Ultramarine blue, and I'm going to begin with a fairly translucent dilute wash, and I'm just allowing these very slender C curves and S curves to filter down and blend into the wooden stem, because I want to get some of that lovely green going into the woody colour. And then I'm just going to sort of go back and do, with the tip of my brush, a very slender little sort of second loop. It's important to keep this quite dilute for this first one because we're going to build up the leaves to all be sort of overlapping with each other. So if I go for my second colour, my slightly stronger one, and I'm going to start painting in more leaves, some that are going to just sort of fit in the gaps and some which will overlap. And although they're all tapering up towards the end of the stem, some will sort of curl out a bit like that. Some will sort of go right upwards, but we're looking for a real sort of range. And I'm doing this all with the size 2 brush. And then last off, I'm just going to get my nice small brush, which is a 4/10. You can see the 410 on there, getting a little bit more of the dark blue, a little bit more of the sap green, getting it just a bit more concentrated. And then just doing a tiny accent on some, not all, of those leaves. And what's nice is when we do it in this sort of fairly fast, loose style, some will have the dark colour sort of blend into them, and others it'll just be a nice little accent. And then just to finish off down at the bottom, just get a sort of much more woody feel to it. Okay, and there we have rosemary. Next on the list is sage. So I am just mixing up some Sap Green and Green Gold, and with my size 2 brush I'm going to start with a stem that sort of starts nice and thick and thins out a little bit, and I'm going to paint some sort of little branches coming off this main stem. And now I've got a large brush, I've got a size 8 brush, getting it nice and wet and coated in the paint. And now we're going to paint some sage leaves. So sage leaves have got a nice sort of broad shape, broad curved shape like this. But if that is a little bit daunting, you can always use a slightly smaller brush. I've got a size 4 here, getting that nice little bit of unpainted space. And I'll just start to paint in. There we go. Big, broad brush strokes. And if you can get the tiniest bit of unpainted space down the middle, that will just work really, really nicely for this loose style. And what I'm really pleased about is I want to get that slightly rough edge of squishing the brush down on the side. Because that really reflects rather nicely the sage leaf itself. So I'll just pop in 1 or 2 more little ones here. When they're getting smaller, they can just be a much smaller single brush stroke. And that's looking really nice. It's lovely when you just sort of get it in one. I'm just getting a little bit of sort of greeny blue shadow just to pop in up the stem. But there we go, those are our very simple sage leaves. And now we're going to move on to coriander, or cilantro as I think it's known in the States. So I'm going to just move my page and reset. I'm going to paint this one in pure sap green, and I'm going to begin with a central stem. And you can get that nice thin line even with a size 2 brush like I've done here. And then coriander sort of grows in parallel pairings. And then it's got a really fun leaf shape. So I'll start on this one here. So I'm going to fan out the brush to start off with. And then I'm going to create a sort of, almost like a sort of Bart Simpson hair. It's a very frilled leaf that grows in pairings. So starting with the fine tip, using the roughness of the edge of that brush and finding all the nice loose shapes that you can. Okay. So starting with one nice one at the top, giving it 2 pairs. You see already getting that nice rough finish there. Gives you half of what you need already. And we'll just pop in a few more up here. So I found with coriander, one of the sort of challenges was allowing myself to go a bit sort of loose and mad with it. If you try and be too controlled with it, especially in this loose kind of style, you just won't win. So just embrace the real sort of frilly madness, I suppose. Okay, then I'll just get my darker colour again and just help some of that green to travel down the stems. And there we go. The next one we're going to do is Thyme, and I need to gather a little bit of alizarin crimson to mix into my stem colour, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue. So we're going to get this really lovely deep purpley sort of almost kind of like an aubergine colour, because we are going to have a little bit of a flower at the top of our sprigs of thyme. So I'm going to begin with my size 2 brush and just going to paint a central stem, and then coming off there there we go. Nice little additional branches. Now we begin with some green leaves, nice and small, and these grow out at lovely little sort of butterfly intervals. So you can just use a little brush, like I've got my 4/10 here, just doing little sweet C curves, and I'm going to fill up the branches with this, and then we'll do some leaves. I'm getting a little bit of my darker green and just adding 1 or 2 accents or an extra leaf even. And now that colour, as we get to the top, is going to take over as we start to put in our flowers. So I've got some alizarin crimson here without the stem mix added, and I'm going to get a little bit of blue, and we're going to make a slightly purpley tone, so that's cobalt blue deep there. And just going to do a few little brush strokes in a petal formation, just sort of floating in the air at this point. And then 1 or 2 little buds that haven't opened yet. And then I'll get that little bit of stem mix, and I'll very gently just start to join them up. And then lastly, as is usually the case with this now, I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on, but I'm going to just make that a little bit more brown, a little less blue. And I'm just painting in a little bit, just sort of underneath most of those little leaf clusters. And there we have our thyme. Next on the list is basil, and I've just brought down some lemon yellow into some hooker's green. Now hooker's green is a really lovely, vibrant, sort of mixing green, and I'm going to start by painting a stem on a bit of a curve, and then I'm going to paint in some stems that just branch off. And now we're going to get a little bit more sap green into the mix, just to knock it back a little bit. Now basil leaves are beautiful, bright, and quite sort of rounded shapes. So I'm just going to get a really nice sort of broad double leaf. When I say a double leaf, I mean a sort of 2 brush stroke mirrored leaf to get that real roundness, and they grow out in lovely broad displays like this. So just dropping in a little bit more sap green at the tip and the base. And you end up using up a lot of your colour when you're doing these big brushstroke leaves. So you need to keep mixing it. So you're just using the belly of the brush, and we might have a little one just growing, so they can just be done with single brush strokes. Smooth that down. So we're going to fill up this branch with plenty more of these broad leaves. As it dries, I like to add in just a few leaf lines, because a basil plant's leaves do have quite distinct leaf lines, but I love it if, like with this one here, if I can just get it where the leaf isn't 100% dry, and those leaf lines will just blend in a little bit. So I'm using a sap green and French ultramarine blue mix there. And then just using that shadowy mix to draw down the colour and give that stem a little bit of detail. And there we go. And our last herb is going to be dill. So let's get ready. I'm going to continue with this nice lemony yellowy green that I've got going on. And dill is a beautiful sort of willowy herb with really fine lines and things. So we're going to begin with a central stem on the size 2 brush. And then we could add the beginnings of the branches, just using the finest tip of that size 2, and the branches grow at parallel points, and then from then I'm going to use my really small 4/10 brush to create the very delicate and sort of seemingly quite infinite branches by just swishing the fine tip to create these lovely delicate little branches. which once they're all sort of gathered together, make a really beautiful sort of tree-like appearance. So I'm just sort of filling in the empty space. So we'll just work our way up the whole herb. And here we have a lovely, delicate little set of branches, and then just to finish off, a little bit of the shadow colour. Just sort of delicately coming off one or two. And there we have our whole set of lovely herbs. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating these videos that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button below and comment to let me know how you're getting on. And of course, if you subscribe, then you'll never miss another video. Until next time, bye!